Very good. Very good. Welcome to number 3. Music
Number
Milestones
three's
YYZ. There you go. 3 letters YYZ.
YYZ. Yes, we're looking at the week of December 1st to 7th. It's winter time. This is like the first wintry edition of Music Milestones YYZ. Did you get snow, Ivor? You're further down. You're Niagara on the Lake.
I'm just kind of out of the snow belt. It's funny, I've been down here just like 16 months or something like that now, but I used to come down and visit quite often, and there could be absolutely nothing on the ground here, and I can go 30 minutes down the road and Buffalo's got 3 feet of snow. So I'm fortunate that way. But last year we got socked pretty good. And of course, it is beginning of December and my snowblower still doesn't work. So I do have somebody coming next week to fix it. I do have my snow tires on. I do have all the fluids loaded up and things. So I'm ready to go for the winter. Probably still more leaves down, but whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say the lake effect actually comes from the north, which is like Huron, Lake Huron, and that. So it's for it to get down to you is quite a ways. Where I am in little Paris, Ontario, we don't normally get a lot of snow here, but we have quite a bit from the lake effect that's happened already. So yeah. And I did my tires just this week, a little late.
Well, the other thing that I've really procrastinated on is the Christmas decorating. And I've got a couple of Christmas gnomes out on my front porch, and I've got a wreath on the door, and that's about it. I haven't done anything else yet. So I really got to get my button gear, so to speak, to get things up, because I've got lots of nice things, and it's great to have them up. So
did you buy new stuff for decorating down to the Hamilton homestead?
I bought a couple of things last year. I am getting a second tree this year. I think having a second tree is okay, especially out in the front room that overlooks the road, and then have something else. And I haven't decided to put something in the big music room yet, or to put it upstairs in the back room that looks out to the backyard. So we'll see what transpires. Family's coming over next week to help me do it, and that's always chaos because there's a couple of small kids, great niece and great nephew, who are at that age now, like 7 and 5. So they're ripping things up,
Okay, I was just gonna ask, I hadn't heard this 2-tree concept. That's kind of cool, right?
I've seen
big enough house.
Big enough house, like an upstairs tree, downstairs tree, or whatever it might be. But it seems to be more common. Like you go to like Michael's or some of these home hardware places, and they're like, like a pre-decorated, a pre-lit tree for $40 or $50. So why not? Why not? And there's some people I know that I've visited recently. Like, oh my God, we were up, ever since Halloween. We're already up and whatever. I'm like, okay, good for you. So I got to get with it. It is the season, and I always think, this time of year, as soon as it kind of hits 1st of December, I always remember on the CFNY Roadshow, I always debated, like, when are we going to start playing Christmas music? But the one record that we always played at the start of December, which I still, have good memories of, is Springsteen's Santa Claus is Coming to Town. It was a live thing, and like, hey band, have you been good? And that whole thing. So it kind of makes me feel good. And it's like, okay, the season's here.
Yes. And I was going to ask you that very question, because there's always an argument between people on when is the appropriate time to put your Christmas lights up or your Christmas decorations up. And there's some that believe kind of like, look, if it snows, or that's one. The other one is the 1st of December. Another one is early, but not before Remembrance Day.
Yes.
So you kind of think of just whenever. When it feels right.
Kind of like, a week or so, or a couple of weeks after Halloween. I mean, the thing is now with technology, the way it's moved, there are a couple of houses in my area that have these year-round lights, and they're automatically controlled, that they can adjust to any season. And for whatever the season is, that they can go into multiple different configurations. So the guy next door got one, and when that happened, the people putting in were trying to sell me real hard on that. It's like, I love lights and everything, but I don't need to have these lights. But they are fantastic, and now other people are starting to get them too.
But think, Ivor, if you do this, think of this whole LED concept based on the different seasons and occasions, that every time you get a new box set delivered to the Hamilton homestead, the lights could go.
It's a new box set for Ivor Hamilton just arrived.
You can jump all over me on this stuff, but what are you doing to support the music industry? What do you like? What are you doing to support these artists? I had like a Darren Wozlik, who used to work at the station, and he goes, I listen on Spotify. Like, I like certain artists on Spotify. And he goes, why do you buy? Darren, his favorite word is why. And I think Fred Patterson's is too. Why do you keep buying records? I said, well, I'd like to support the artist outside of the 6 cents they would make on getting something from a streaming service.
Here. Good for you. Yes.
So we need to get you back into having music. There's plenty of room at your place there, I see.
Yes, in the small music den. You've got the big one, but you're right. Okay, we're just going to move on. We're going to go back to the 80s. Let's look back and talk about some of the releases and concerts 40 years ago.
Let's do it.
Okay, one of the things we wanted to talk about, and I do this in the posts, and if you're a fan of our little podcast here, you may also follow us on socials, Music Milestones, YYZ, where you will see, and I've been doing this for some time, and full disclosure, I get these from, there was a music industry trade magazine called RPM, and lo and behold, they're online, so I could look back at some issues.
Yes.
And I did also recently, Ivor, you might have noticed too, that I did find from 1980, I did find a few magazines from 1980 where they did post some of the ads, the new music ads at CFNY, but most of them have been from 1985, so 40 years ago.
Right. So
and
you've got CFNY's the RPM one. And RPM, by the way, is not around anymore. I don't know, they've probably been in business close to 20 years now, but they were the Bible for a long time in this country.
Yeah, any record companies and radio stations all submitted information, or we followed what was going on in the music business. And so each week at the radio station, there would be a music meeting, and then somebody, and this is the best we can explain for those who've seen these posts, and I've taken them right out of RPM. They're full of spelling mistakes and the wrong title. Like this week's, 40 years ago this week, which would be in the week of December 1st to 7th, it's like the Cult and Revolutions, when it was just Revolution.
And now was the band at the top. There's a band on this list called Ohama. I don't even remember that.
I think there was a Canadian artist out of the Midwest somewhere, I think. I think. Okay. I just just recall it slightly, but this one actually, the one we're looking at right now, doesn't have a lot of spelling errors, but we've seen some pretty funny ones.
There's an amazing band called Lloyd Call. Lloyd Call and the Commotion.
Lloyd Cole,
and it looks like Easy Places, and it
does say that.
And there was, now not on this list, but we were having a laugh over, what was the other one? Tom Waits Downtown Tour. And I was like, wow, dude, I didn't know Tom Waits was doing tours downtown. So anyway.
It was the remix of Downtown Train. So the best that we could figure what happened here is that you worked with also Eddie Valaket out of the music department.
I did. And he was the one who would call these in
or you might, because you did have students, right? Interns?
We did not at that point.
Okay.
And we didn't get those till later on. So this would have been something that he would have taken care of at the time. And so,
or would it be?
I don't know who was at the other end at RPM either, right?
Because so the way this is, to my mind, this is what.
But he may have. There could have been, because you know what, there were people always floating around the radio station that were helping people there that I didn't know. It was like Seinfeld, and when Kramer had his intern or whatever, and there was situations like that, and like, you are who? I'm helping whoever. Yes, and I was like, get out of here. Leave. Go and leave.
Well, that's what I noticed too. And it was kind of just I don't know, just a kind of a cool atmosphere. And there were all kinds of people, that wandered in and out of there, and nobody seemed to.
People that had no business being there.
Yes, well, that too.
Yeah.
So I figured maybe Eddie or yourself said, okay, here's our new ads. Here, go phone them in to RPM.
He may have.
And then they were scribbled down, like you probably, and I've seen your handwriting
after the music meeting, and you didn't know what they, they were, inevitably it was probably just, and if I wrote them down, nobody could ever read my writing, including myself. So,
and then someone was tasked with that. Yeah, someone was tasked to phone these into RPM, and then between whoever answered the phone at RPM, and because this is, it's 1985, so
there was no fax machines. We didn't have one, so we were one of the last places to get a fax machine. So
really,
I don't think we got it till probably 87 or something like that, at least maybe 88. Anyway, so they would have been phoned in. So we didn't even have a telex machine, like they did at Polygram, which was amazing, right? So.
Right. And the other important factor here is, it sounded like it was from Boston there, is that this is not all the ads. This is not all the songs or albums in rotation. These are just selected
because there were still albums that would, straight albums that would go in. There's a music meeting once a week, and then I would bring in, to clarify things, I was the import music director, so I would bring in the imports, and Eddie was in charge of doing domestic records at that particular time, and so he would bring his domestics in, I would bring in the imports, and we'd go through them, and if for some reason we didn't add a record on that week, and myself, if I felt really strongly about it, I could bring it back again next week or the subsequent weeks, until usually it was a record had like 3 weeks, but there were lots of occasions where I pushed things for a long time because I felt strongly about, getting them on the air. And it was David Marsden at the time, myself, and Eddie, but occasionally announcers would sit in. I think you sat in, and Liz Janik sat in, and, a few other people, would sit in, and some of those people too, we let them bring records to the thing. Cause to me, that's a big thing about what CFNY was about, that we couldn't, come up with everything. So if somebody was like, hey, you know what, we should take a listen to this, then so be it. In the very early days, I have to say, like when it was the Little Yellow House, it was so crazy. It'd be like, well, whatever came in, you would just tape it up and type out the stickers. We had stickers on all the albums to name the tracks, and they would all be lined up. And then each one of the announcers would have a color. Now, Scott, I don't know what color you were, but I do remember that, somebody would have a purple, and somebody else, I think Jim Reed had green, and Earl Jive would have brown. I just don't remember particularly, but everybody had a color, so you knew who played what. Because again, none of the music.
I don't remember my color. Funny, I remember JR as green. Beyond that, I don't remember.
Right. So nothing was computerized at the time. It was just, we put that tape on, which pretty much every radio station did, and then we had these little stickers that you'd type up the songs, and we'd put reviews on the records. Each record was listened to, we'd review it, and we'd put on what time of day we suggest it could be. It could be morning would be, that means you can play it any time, or if it was something really heavy like Killing Joke, nighttime, or Requiem, or something after 3, or something that might have been suggestive, like a Frank Zappa record, you only play that, evening time, just to sort of keep things a little more family friendly during the day.
Yeah, and I think that sort of day partying, as they call it in the industry, started to happen as the station became bigger and more successful, right? It was pretty much wide open,
It was wide open at one point, and some guys ruined it for everybody else. And I there was one, I will say, maybe he'll call me out at some point, but we had a DJ in the early days, Keith Elshaw. And so you'd put down the track, you'd rate the tracks on the album, and whatever we rated as the worst tracks, that was the first song that he would play. Purposely, he'd go and play the worst songs or whatever, right? So, there was, for everything on how great we were, there was some childish stuff that went on back then. I will say too, in the library, Scott, there was a lot of records that had artwork on it, hand-drawn artwork. And I'm talking about the kind of shit that people did when they were in high school, when they were bored sitting in a class. So they would make, little drawings of jet planes or drawings of people in the park or whatever that was. They were all over the albums, and it would be people talking, making comments about other announcers and other stuff. So it was
some of that.
It was funny, and it was fun to look back on it, but it was also juvenile at the time. So
Agreed. So one thing on these, and we're just talking about these ads, these new ads and music posted in RPM magazine that was happening every week. It was a weekly publication for the music industry. Anyway, I want to clarify something here because in the posting, and the one we're looking at from the week of December 1st to 7th, 1985, it does say heavy rotation at the top. And that's a little misleading because there was no scheduled rotation of songs. It was up to the announcers to pick them. And we did have it, and I was there in 85. So there was and basically there were just, 12 inches or albums sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
We just started to get CDs in around that time, but mostly it was still records. But the heavy rotation what really is more about these are
almost go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say these are
on it.
Out of the choice that we played for new stuff, it would be the stuff that the announcers would be playing more.
Right. So
generally speaking,
the perspective really is on this. So you'd look back at the week before, you'd go in and go, right. And let's also remember that the station had a policy that we would not play CFNY, that is 102.1 The Edge in Toronto, that it's now known, or Spirit of Radio, that we would never play anything more than 10 times in a given week, or never play a song more than once a day. So a heavy at CFNY would be anything that was played, an album that was played, let's say the Kate Bush album that had Hounds of Love on it was played 10 times in 1 week. That's not necessarily the song, it's the entire album. So that was very different, considering if you compared it to other radio stations who had different licenses than CFNY did. And most of those stations had much looser licenses and could play songs a lot more than CFNY could back at the time, because they had a very unique promise of performance, as they called it. And that's why you would only have these songs that were played once a day. And if, they were played more, if that song was ever played more than once a day, you could win $102, Scott.
That's right. Okay, we're gonna stay in the 80s for a second. I'm gonna play a little snippet of a song here that to bring back the memory. I was listening to this yesterday. What was that?
It brings back so many good memories.
Yeah, and I was listening to this with the headphones on yesterday, and just the fidelity and what's going on musically in the track and that album is just fantastic. And it's funny because we're talking about the second Specials record. That's the songs "Do Nothing" by the Specials from the second album, and we all know that when that second album came out, it was a bit of a shock.
It really was.
Right?
It was an entirely different direction for the band, and they burned out pretty quick, and they sort of had enough of one another, and Jerry Dammers ran the ship. It was all Jerry Dammers, all two-tone, all Jerry Dammers all the time. And, some people didn't really react to that very well. By the time they played the Police Picnic, which was August 23rd, 1981, they were on the music charts, fantastic. Ghost Town was a #1 hit in the UK. It was, they were really rising in America, but they were on their way out. I think a couple of weeks later, they played their last gig and broke up after that. So,
and it happened all very, very fast.
All of the other things that morphed off into, the Color Field and the Special AKA and things like that. But it was very short lived. But that second record, I think it stood the test of time really, really well. I love the first record too, but they're two different, very different moods for that first and second record with them.
An acquired taste, but once you got into it, it took me several months, but then it was like, okay, but you wanted more of the first album, please, but it just didn't happen.
Listen, there's so many bands that made those changes, and good on them. You can't win by doing the same thing over and over again all the time, right?
That's true. Okay, we're going to go back 50 years to the 70s here. We got a couple of big records to talk about. Actually, just before we jump into that, Ivar.
Yes.
You and I were talking. You were at the dentist again this week. Tell everybody why you went back. Why'd you go back to the dentist?
Well, this was I had a crown work and some pretty heavy duty work, and as you get older, it's part of life. My mother had just endless dental appointments, and both myself and my brother have inherited that. But I had a crown put back on, and or a new crown put on, and God damn it, it was painful. So anyway, I think we're done for now. I think I'm okay, but it just seems like every few months I got to go to the dentist and something comes up. Thank God my teeth have not fallen out.
Well, the crown popped out or fell out. Like how
the
many
crown
weeks
fell
after?
out. Yeah. So the new one, they got some extra special super glue and duct tape, and we're good. So
you got to get the Gorilla Glue, right?
But yeah, they got an order of Gorilla in, and now we're fine. I actually had a steak last night. I was like, oh, thank God I can eat a steak now. So anyway.
So we're looking at the week of December 1st to the 7th, albums and tracks that came out 50 years ago, 1975. So absolute monster record. It was the live Bob Marley album. And this was from, it came out in it came out in December. But the recording was back in, I think, June or July, I believe.
I can't remember what specific month, but it was at the Lyceum.
Yes.
And quite honestly, I mean, you look at people talk about the greatest live albums of all time. It generally goes back to rock albums, and people talk about the Allman Brothers at Fillmore East and Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous and the Who live at Leeds, all fantastic records. To my ears, Live at the Lyceum is quite possibly one of the greatest live albums ever recorded. It is absolutely fantastic end to end, and it's been reissued a number of times over the years and added some extra songs from the set. But the first time I heard it was at a house party in early 1970s in the UK, and honest to God, the party was on fire. The whole house went crazy when somebody put this album on, and the song that I'll never forget was Get Up, Stand Up. And of course the other one was No Woman, No Cry, as a slow jam, but it got me absolutely hooked on Bob Marley and into reggae.
Absolutely. Just up in I guess, top 20 tracks of all time, that live version from that album, the full, 5-6 minutes of it. And it was a track from an earlier album, but the live version just is outstanding.
The live album just transformed. I mean, there's certain live albums, and we've talked about a couple of, I know we talked about Frampton Comes Alive too on this program before. Obviously was million seller, multi-million seller, but this Marley album has really stood the test of time. It was a huge record in Europe, not so much in America, but I went later on, and I came back to Canada, and I found it really odd that I was living in Brampton, and at that point, Brampton had a huge influx of new Canadians from Jamaica that were living there, and most of them weren't into Bob Marley. They were all into like funk at the time, funk and disco. So Bob Marley comes to town. He plays Maple Leaf Gardens. I ended up going by myself. None of my friends wanted to go and see it, but I was so fortunate. I got a 10th row floor seat to see Bob Marley, so I will always be thankful, never forget it. And I worked a little bit later on. I just started at CFNY, but I also worked at Sam the Record Man at Bramalea City Center. And it was like a high fidelity record store for the staff that worked there. And they were pushing all these records like, oh, we got to move Supertramp's, whatever it was, Breakfast in America at the time. And Saturday Night Fever had come out and Grease had come out, and like, we're not selling any of those records. The store manager was like, I don't understand why we're selling so many Bob Marley records. We're selling so many of these. And I'm like, I don't know either. And we're selling a lot of Generation X. And I'm like, oh, imagine that. It's funny that we were always out of stock in that store. Anybody asking for Saturday Night Fever, it's like, never heard of it. No, we don't have it. Like Grease. And then, oh my God, when that Sgt. Pepper soundtrack came out with George Burns on it, that store never heard of it. I think they had 600 copies in it. We never sold it.
Ivor hid it away
because the staff hated it so much. So
Ivor's playlist takes over.
Oh yeah.
You know what would have been cool? I mean, you saw the Marley show at the Maple Leaf Gardens. Like that would have been, that same band that performed at the Lyceum was the same band, same tour that was at Massey Hall I think in June that year. How
Yes.
that was sold out. What a great show that would have been to have seen.
It absolutely would have been. He also did a show at Convocation Hall as well. So
Yes.
I think
Yep.
that's maybe where it started, moved to Massey and then onwards to the Gardens. I don't recall after that one Garden show if I think maybe he was back one more time. I just haven't had a chance to look it up.
He was supposed to. I think he was supposed to, and then he was really getting sick at that point. So he was the part of a tour, but I think Toronto, a number of other dates in the US were canceled it was the tail end of the tour. That was the last. That would have been the last time, but he
there was
didn't.
that live album. I don't know if it was the final show, but it was pretty close to the final show, the Live in Pittsburgh record, which is a pretty good record too. We'll say that stands out pretty well. And I will also say, I always liked the Babylon by Bus record, which was a double album, which gave you a little more Marley. And I liked it for also the reason that there was a review in it, and it's on the back of the cover from the Toronto Star. So that really got my attention. Like, oh yeah, they're really paying attention to Toronto in this one too. Because I used to think that you go to a concert in Toronto, go, man, we're the greatest audience in the world. Like nobody does it better than Toronto to support concerts, which of course, you go to another city. But I never really traveled much in those early days because I didn't have any money. I was in radio, so you never get paid unless you're a morning person. But once I started going to shows in other places, going, yeah, there's rock and roll fans and reggae fans everywhere.
Well, that whole thought and comment about the Toronto audiences being the greatest and ahead of everybody with a great ear leads us to our next discussion. And this is interesting because I know, Ivor, you're not a big fan of the band, but we're talking releases from 50 years ago this week, December 1st to 7th. Equinox by Styx was released. And several months later, I know you're not a big Styx fan, but here's the interesting story on that. My story I was going to tell.
I'll jump in. You tell me what you did and I'll move in because I just want to set the record straight on my perspective. That's all.
Okay, fair enough. So, but this ties into the live experience. So this album Equinox comes out in December, and Bad Company was doing a tour, and Bad Company had Styx as the opening act. Mm-hmm. And we've seen this story before where there's an opening act, and then the tour, of course, the tour could last upwards of a year or more. But as the tour is going, the opening act all of a sudden starts to gain more traction, they get a little more popular, or the album they had just released, and this is the case with Styx, who are opening up for Bad Company, and the show was in April. But by the time the show at Maple Leaf Gardens happened with Bad Company as the headliner, Styx as the opener, the album had been going gangbusters in Toronto.
Right.
And when Styx went on stage, like the crowd went crazy. I was there. And everybody was on their, just on the seats. And I think Bad Company, everybody was like, what's going on here? So basically, Styx stole the show. I'm still a Bad Company fan, and Bad Company were great, but Styx stole that show. And really, it was because of the album. The album had gone crazy. And when the band played Light Up, which is a classic Styx song, that era, everybody remember the old lighters,
of course.
Phones. The lighters were up and
phones. It's lighters. Yes.
Anyway, that was a moment.
My thing on Styx is that it's really just the genre where you get people lumping them into sort of the prog rock thing. And to me, they were just more of a pop rock band more than a prog rock.
I would agree.
And so, but that's where I have issue with it. And also, and for us at CFNY, like CFNY had Styx records in the library, but they collected dust for the most part. I maybe remember once or twice hearing Styx on the air there, but it was very, very seldom. But I was a big fan of a few sort of like comparable records that were out at the time, like the band UK, Genesis, even Post Gabriel, Gentle Giant, bands like that. I just was like, are you kidding me? And I get people, and people also say that about Kansas were a great prog rock band. I'm like, yeah, they just didn't hold a candle as far as I'm concerned to those British bands, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that's really my 2 cents on it. They've got their fans or whatever, and they're still out there with Larry Gowan on vocals. So be it, but not my collection and not something I listen to.
A lot of people bought it though. Hey man, you didn't grow up in Scarborough, right?
I grew up in Brampton, Scarborough. Yeah, that's Scarborough West. So
there was your problem. If you grew up in Scarborough, you'd have the Equinox album in your collection. You just had to. Listen, everybody did.
I knew lots of people who did it. I was not listening to that stuff. I moved on. Well, I never even jumped on the bandwagon. I didn't have a Boston record in my collection. I didn't have a Kansas record. Fuck that. I didn't have any of that stuff in my collection.
Because you're Ivor Hamilton, man. There you go. All right. We're gonna let's segue into we've been talking about live concerts. Let's segue into some live concerts. Well, Ivor and I, we started live in Toronto on CFNY back somewhere in the mid 80's. And that's where we started this Toronto concert history. We used to do a little segment on the show, and that's how that started.
We had a big green book. I guess it was kind of like a ledger. I suppose if it was proper like use, it was a ledger for accounting or whatever, but the book was big enough that we could put it in. I still have a giant binder at home in my collection, photocopy of that book. And then when I moved here, some motor oil got on it, so it's dried out now or whatever, but it's seen better days. So at some point I may need to redo it. But you and I did it by hand at first, and then when I left the station, I think maybe May Potts contributed, or a couple of other people helped to fill dates in and things like that. And then of course you've continued the battle over the years to do it on your own.
Yes. Yeah. And we'll do a whole other story episode on it, because there's more to that story, how we started the research to that, and that green book. And I got a photocopy of that somewhere too, thanks to Captain Phil, I think, who had a copy of it and sent it to me. But that's where I discovered Ivor Hamilton's handwriting.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
And and you saw my spelling.
Yes, your spelling's not so good. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now. It says on the side of the binder, it says The Concert Bible. So there you go.
The big green book, we used to call it. Anyway, we'll talk more about that another time. So speaking of prog rock and such, and we're staying in the 70s for a moment, because Hawkwind, actually, no, sorry, they were a 70s band, but they played the Diamond this week in 1990. And I know you're a Hawkwind fan. And I don't know much about Hawkwind. Explain Hawkwind, and were they still together at this point?
Yes. I mean, Hawkwind have been around in one shape or form since about 1968. I think the first album came out in 1969. There was a song that the station used to play, the Pete and Geet show used to play. It was called Hurry on Sundown. And I know that was also a favorite song of John Lydon's too. But the band were known as a space rock band. They were very visual. They had a incredible light show, visual show. At one point, they had a woman in the band. Her name was Stacia, and she used to dance naked with all sorts of
paint on,
psychedelic paint all over her, and it was pretty wild. Lemmy was in the band up until 1975, and they busted him for drugs, and he got kicked out of Canada. So then he got kicked out of the band, and he formed Motorhead. So Motorhead formed because of Canada customs, I guess, in a loose way. And so lots of people had come and gone in the lineup, and so it was a little bit different as it got into the 90s. The most consistent member is Dave Brock, and so that lineup came to town in 1990. I mean, let's face it, it's one of those bands who were a lot bigger in the UK and on the continent than they were over here. They didn't get over here too much, but they have a lot of fans. They still do have a lot of fans to this day. I've met a lot of them over the years, and I just happen to be one of them, a lifelong Hawkwind fan. In Search of Space, I think is lumped in with some of those other amazing albums from the 70s. I remember the first time I heard it was on Chum FM when they were a progressive radio station. It was one of those like, oh my God, what was that? It's kind of like, Scott, the first time you heard CFNY and heard Television by Japan, and I heard You Shouldn't Do That by Hawkwind in Search of Space on Chum FM. I was like, oh my God, what is that? So I became a fan out of that. And Kim Hughes, who did Live in Toronto long after you and I left in the 90s, she used to make fun of me all the time, and she would on the air. I was referred to as former music director Ivor Hawk Hamilton. But to this day, I still have a Hawkwind T-shirt, and I got to see I got to see them not only in that 1990, but I got to see them at Reading Festival in 1977 when Robert Calvert was the vocalist, and the band had become quite different, sort of a little more tight and progressive at that time. But I will say, there was a compilation out that we did. We're going to talk about this later at some point. Compilation called Spirit of the Edge. And it was, and people goes, oh, it was taken from, the Spirit of Radio or whatever. And I was like, no, it was actually taken from a Hawkwind song that the station used to play a lot called Spirit of the Age. And we changed it to Spirit of the Edge. So that is my Hawkwind story for you.
I love it. Okay. Well, really, we'll keep in this sort of 70s vibe a little bit here. It was, we're talking about concerts back in Toronto. The Rolling Thunder Review came through town, a couple of dates, the 1st and 2nd of December 1975. This was Bob Dylan with a bunch of friends, basically.
Yeah, and I think some connection to the band, and that he was always well connected to the band or whatever. But I think in 1975, the two biggest tours were the Rolling Thunder Review and the Rolling Stones tour of America in 1975. So it was front page news. And a few months later in 1976, and you'll hear us talking about later, is the Desire record came out, which was an incredible Bob Dylan album, because Dylan has so much stuff out there that people forget about a lot of things, and it's hard to focus. But he was still hitting it out of the park with his records at that point too.
75. I wanted to mention this. The Tramps play a Zodiac One. This is December 1st, 1975. We were talking a little bit about this. And Zodiac One, which is interesting because it was one of not the first, but it was one of the early discos in Toronto. It was in the Ramada Inn at the 401 and Don Valley.
Yes.
And I don't know if you remember so much, because it opened earlier in the year, so 1975, but it was one of the first venues, not just discos, but venues, to put so much sound and light into it.
Yeah.
They spent a fortune, and so they did have bands playing there as well, but it was a big deal. A lot of people went to Zodiac One. It was a cool place to be.
Yeah, I mean, I was underage at the time, so
yeah.
when I was in grade 10, they weren't admitting us to those places, but there was a venue in the Bramalea City Center that it was kind of a rip-off of that. It was kind of like a Tramps light, and all of a sudden everybody started dressing up and dressing the part. This would have been like 76, early 1977, and started, we're going to the disco, and people would dress up, and I'm like, oh my God. And then it was like, I'm sorry, I didn't have any stomach for that music. And it was all of a sudden, it was outrageous, Scott. It was $1 for a beer. Like who in the world would want to pay $1 for a beer? Because I could go to the Sword and Shield up the street and get 2 drafts for 90 cents. And why the hell would I pay $1 for a beer? That's outrageous. So
yes,
anyway.
You're paying for the glamour and the space.
I remember also having those conversations with people at the time, going, as soon as concert tickets hit $10, that's it. I'm never going again. That's too expensive. So different times.
Oh, yeah. Some other shows of note, 1980s, of 45 years ago this week, was the Son of Stiff tour, the Danforth Music Hall. And this was a tour generated by the label, the Stiff Records label, right? And they basically take their acts and bands and put them together in a package, which is a great idea. I wonder why other labels didn't do that. Or I guess the music might have been a little too different for crowds.
Maybe
if you did that.
I mean, the first example really of that was, the soul labels in the States, like you'd have the Cavalcade of Stars, and you'd have like all the Motown artists would get on a bus and go all over the States, and they would have the same backing band, and they would each get up and play 2 or 3 songs. And I think it was probably modeled after that to get the Stiff Records out on the road. And it was a great way for people to be exposed to all of those artists. Now, right in front of me, I haven't got the list, but I think, what was it? Maybe Any Trouble, Reckless Eric, was it Lena Lovitch? I don't know if Rachel Sweet was on there as well.
Joe King Carrasco, Temple Tudor.
Yeah.
Equators. Remember the Equators? Isn't that a ska band, wasn't it?
Yeah, a couple of songs that were played on CFNY. And my memory of that wasn't so much seeing the performance, but the guy who ran the label was bigger. Every once in a while, you get these guys that are bigger than life that are the labels, and some of them are celebrities in their own right. And the guy who ran Stiff Records was Dave Robinson, and he came to town with the tour. And I have a picture up on the wall. Maybe we'll use this. We'll put it in one of our postings.
Yeah.
Is Dave had one of those Union Jack suit jackets, similar to what you'd see Pete Townsend wear or Paul Weller wear in later years. So he had one of those, and so he gave me his Union Jack jacket, and I gave him my god-awful CFNY satin jacket that we had that were two. There was a brown, a blue one and a purple one or whatever. And, everybody had those satin jackets back then. They were quite popular, but it's like you wouldn't be caught dead with those today.
Unless you're at Zodiac 1. It fit right in. It fit right in. By the way, that tour, the Son of Stiff tour, where there were 5 acts, $9.50. It's December 1980.
I'm sure there was a lot of shared hotel rooms amongst the bands back then.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Oh, you wanted to mention Miles Davis. It was 1970 at Massey Hall. I think he played Massey a number of times in and around there, but that would have been cool.
He would have. Yeah, he would have. But I just think, one of the greatest jazz artists of all time. It's just worth mentioning that, he did come to Toronto. And I mean, if you were a jazz fan in 1970 and you got a chance to see Miles Davis, man, oh man, what an experience. It's kind of like, I think about, I saw Bob Marley, and I will always be grateful for that. And had I been old enough and could have afforded it at the time, I would have gone to see Miles Davis, because he was such an amazing icon in the world of jazz.
Okay, just one more to fit in really quickly, because it was 2 shows. This is 1985 this week, the 1st to the 7th of December. We're looking at a ZZ Top, 2 shows at Maple Leaf Gardens, probably both sold out. This is ZZ Top at certainly their sales peak. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, they continued on, into the 90s as well. I mean, into the, the MTV age or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I always thought ZZ Top were fun. Like, it's just like when we were out on the CFNY Video Roadshow, and it was like, we always played all the big songs on CFNY, but every once in a while you're going, you know what, like, we'll play Sharp Dressed Man tonight, or we'll play the video for legs or whatever. Yeah. And the Beards and the Hot Rods and things like that. I mean, they were just like a kind of a fun party band or whatever.
Yeah, I think the videos help too, for sure.
They absolutely would have. And prior to that, LaGrange is one of the best kick-ass rock songs of all time. I mean, I can't deny that. And Billy Gibbons still makes good records. The band's still around in some shape or form or whatever. But when I later left CFNY and went to Polygram, I was doing promotion at Polygram in my very early days at Polygram. And I didn't really have my job down quite so much. And our head office was in Montreal. So I was kind of a lone wolf in a lot of ways on certain things. So the Scorpions came to Toronto. They were doing promotion, and they were here for a couple of days. And it was like, hey, you guys want to go and see ZZ Top? And they go, oh yeah, that would be great. Let's go and see ZZ Top. So they were at Maple Leaf Gardens, and we walked into Maple Leaf Gardens. We didn't have any special treatment. We were just going to go and sit in the seats and just blend in with the crowd. That lasted about all of 3 minutes, and people lost their minds. They're like, oh my God, the Scorpions are here. So we had to get up and leave, and we never saw the show. Because they were mobbing the Scorpions. And as you know, the Scorpions are always here to sting you.
There you go. Yeah, I was just going to say the ZZ Top, the 85, the Eliminator and Afterburner
or whatever.
Yeah, there was a very different ZZ Top. Not for me, thank you. But that early stuff, like compare, Legs to Jesus Just Left Chicago. I mean, it's just completely different band.
It's look at Grand Funk too. I mean, Grand Funk in the early days, I mean, they were just a kick-ass super rock band, and then all of a sudden their bills weren't getting paid, and they changed management, and it's like, oh, they brought in a keyboard player, and all of a sudden they were making bubblegum top 40 hits, and I completely left them as a fan after that. It wasn't my thing, but I think a lot of that happened with ZZ Top too.
Okay, want to go back 20 years? A couple things to
Sure.
talk about. I got to find my 20 years intro. I don't have a 20 years intro. How about a 25-year intro?
Go 25. And in the meantime, the one thing is kind of fun, I'm excited about, is Stranger Things new season just went up, and man, oh man, the music's exciting in that. I saw psychedelic. Well, they had Psychedelic Furs, Pretty in Pink in there, and the audio beds are Tangerine Dream and Jean-Michel Jarre, which is kind of cool. One of the cast members is wearing a fall T-shirt for the Ben Sinister album, and I'm like, how cool is that? It's all set in 1990 or 1983 rather. So yeah. It's not quite on the money because that album came out a little bit later, but maybe the T-shirt was out a few years before. So to have that in there, and then at one point somebody hands one of the cast members a John Coltrane cassette. And there's a setting in a radio station where Maya Hawke is a DJ all of a sudden, and they've got the old cart machines going, and they're spinning a Motown record. And I was like, you know what? This is worth me watching because of that.
And look what they did for Kate Bush and Running Up That Hill, right?
Kate Bush is still in the series, numerous episodes. So yes, Kate Bush gave her an entire new audience, entire new life, as we all know.
Okay, we're going to roll back, not as far back, 20 years and 25 years. I did want to start with 20 years ago because it was 20 years ago this week that XM radio launched in Canada.
Yes.
The U.S. had launched in 2001, but it was 2005, November. I thought it was the first week of December, but I found another, this is the problem with some of these dates and that you see different dates. But anyway, it was either the 29th of November 2005 or the first week of December. But anyway, XM radio, big deal in Canada. You know what I was looking for? I was just looking all over the place here, but having moved recently to where I am in Paris, Ontario now, I did get rid of some things, but I used to have the very original.
Oh, the little receiver for it.
Yeah.
I had one of those too. Yeah.
Yeah, and you put it up on your dash or something, and it connected to your car stereo somehow. But it was kind of a receiver that before you could actually get satellite radio in your the machines in the car itself. But
do you still have yours, or you don't? Do you not have it anymore?
I had it for a while in the beginning just to check it out and then it just the cost. I thought, no, and being in radio at the time and being a program director, I needed to as my job just pay attention to my own radio station. So
right.
I didn't often have the time.
Because those guys were doing some stuff better or whatever. It's serious. I was very fortunate that I had a buddy of mine who ran one of the Sirius stations who'd come out of alternative radio in the States. He was running a station that's not on the air there anymore called the Bridge, the Loft rather. It was called the Loft, and it was fantastic. It was really sort of like an adult alternative setup, but man, oh man, it was really, really good. And there was another channel that I really loved that they changed or it went away. It was the Deep Cuts.
Yeah.
That was quite adventurous. I still have it. I still listen to it quite regularly, but I have had my druthers about a lot of things, especially a lot of the repeats. But my go-to is Little Steven's Underground Garage, and I think they've been very true to garage music. They play the girl groups from the 60s. They play a lot of new stuff, and they've supported Canadian bands. I mean, they were the first people in America to play the Beaches, which I think good on them for doing that. And there's a couple of good Canadian stations. The Verge is on there. There's a hip station as well. So I still enjoy listening to those stations. And the other wonderful thing that I like about it, especially with the app on that, when I go overseas, I can hear it anywhere in the world. So I've listened to it in Colombia. I've listened to it in the UK. I listened to it in Italy. I listened to it in Switzerland. And, we were over there, my buddy and I, in September, and there was the start of the Buffalo Bills NFL season. And he was flipping out that we couldn't watch it in any bar, any place. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure it's on Sirius XM. Sure enough, it was. So he got to hear the Buffalo Bills game. So those little things are some of the special extras that I like. But to your point, it's not cheap to have.
No, true. And one of the things I liked is like when I used to go down to the U.S. for business sometimes, but sometimes on vacation, the rental car, and they would have XM in there for
Yeah.
free or something, or there was those trial weeks when it was free. What's great about if you're doing a road trip is it's definitely because of the variety, but also like the comedy channels. The first time it was like, wow, there's
All the
comedy.
comedy stuff is
If
great.
you're on a long road trip, it was like, oh, this is a gas,
There's definitely some great comedy stuff on there. There is no doubt about that. So and my go-to is Chris Carter's British Invasion, which is on from noon till 4 every week, and covers mostly 60s and 70s British, and sometimes, his thing is pretty loose though on the British stuff, and he'll be going, Neil Young turned 80, and they've got the same king, so that's close enough for me. It's the stuff you couldn't get away with in Canada, but they're like, yeah, you know what, Canada's part of the Commonwealth, so we're going to play a set of Canadian music, and now we're going to play a bunch of bands who wish they were British, and so it's like, whatever it is, like the Rascals and things like that. So it's a little loose, but I think it's a wonderful show. Anyway,
okay, here's a memory that'll. This is such a great track. What a great track. Hate to say I told you, the Hives 25 years ago. Again, another one I was listening to in the headphones yesterday, pulling up this clip, and just the way the guitars in the left channel and then the other guitars and everything comes in on the right channel and the headphones just sounds great. What a great album. What a great band. Never saw them live. The Hives. Did you see them live? Because I loved it. I hope it was as good as the record, and I assume they were.
They absolutely are. They played here a couple of months ago. I didn't see it. They played with an Australian band called the Chats. I don't know if you've heard the Chats, but
no.
Oh my God, the Chats are Sex Pistols 2025. Like, they're just outrageous. So they played a double bill together. I missed that show, unfortunately. They are coming back next year. I can't remember what month it is, but I bought a ticket, so I'm going to see them again. But I did see them on the very first time they came to Toronto. And I don't know if this was just on purpose but the singer said to the audience, and it was at the Warehouse, and he said, this is our first time in Toronto, USA. And I was like, great, good. I haven't heard that one before. Anyway, so I don't know if he was just having some Spinal Tap fun or was really confused, because, some people confused Canada and the States for being the same place if you're from other parts of the world and have never been here before. So
that's true. That's true. All right.
But a fabulous band.
Yes. Okay, rolling along is just watching the clock here. I want to cover some things from the 90s going back. We're actually particularly looking at 1990, some records that came out that were of attention that caught everybody, I think, sonically by surprise. And that one of them was certainly Enigma, a German project. And,
Yes.
when I was researching back into this, Ivor, I'd forgotten that Michael Cretu was really the principal person of this whole Enigma project. And we played Michael Cretu on CFNY, you remember?
Yes, we did. Yes. And I think, good record of the time. I think of the early 90s, and there's certain acts that you think of that were very big at the time. And I think that one really fits into it, going, yeah, you know what, if I want something from the early 90s, Enigma was one of those ones that people kind of loved, that eclectic sound that they had and was hugely popular at the time.
Yeah, the album was Roman numeral MCMXCAD. That's what.
Yeah, I would just say Enigma.
Do you know your Roman numerals? It's a long time ago. The album, the long time ago album from Enigma.
Yeah. But it was pretty good. I mean, I can't say I've gone back and listened to it for a while, but it was a welcome sound, to be honest with you.
Yeah, kind of new agey at the Gregorian chants. and Sadness was one of the big tracks on there.
Yep.
Do you remember the Michael Cretu tracks? Here's one for you.
I do.
Do you remember?
It wasn't Cretu. Am I confusing it with a band called C2 Javu or whatever?
Yes, you are.
He was with that. Oh, I am? It's different?
I think that was somebody different.
Michael Crespu or something. So anyway.
Yeah.
But I do recall, but I don't remember the song.
Samurai was one we played.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, and I think Silver Water, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll have to dig that one up one day. We have a new feature. Should we introduce our new feature here?
Yes, let's.
I think it explains it's self-explanatory once you hear it.
Okay.
All right.
And the guy who sings that is dead too. So Jim Carroll bands.
Oh, it all fits.
Jim Carroll.
And thank you, Jay Tufford, who's alive, for the production behind that. So we did in this past week have a few people to talk about that have left us. The big one being Jimmy Cliff.
Yeah,
died this past week.
I think behind Bob Marley, he's probably because Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Jimmy Cliff are probably the greatest icons of reggae. There's a few other ones that are big as well, but original players from way back when. He did come to CFNY once too. I remember him coming into the station, cool. and meeting him, and he was a total gentleman. But the harder they come movie. Yeah. Have that in my collection, seen it a few times. It looks pretty chintzy today, but it was pretty groundbreaking at the time for moving reggae music into the mainstream and getting word out on reggae, because it was in the early 70s, reggae music was really struggling to get through in America in particular. Guys like Jimmy Cliff and Chris Blackwell to bring it to the next level and to the mainstream audience. But Jimmy Cliff was very solid he was making records up until the last couple of years. He was still
still performing too, I think, up until
he was
late day, and lived a good life into his 80s or the early 80s.
82, I believe.
82, yeah. Okay. A name that not everybody may be familiar with is Gary Mounfield.
Mounfield, yes, bassist for the Stone Roses, and also had been with Primal Scream. And I mean, I think you don't think of him generally if you're from Toronto or of the band. You sort of go elsewhere when you think of the Stone Roses, but he was a big part of it and brought the bass sound to it. And there's pretty prominent bass sound with the Stone Roses. People are quite upset in the UK. There's lots of massive tributes going on for Gary right now, and he will be missed.
Sorry, I didn't have my mic up. There we are. Okay. I thought I was looking for an intro here, sir, and I thought we need a birthday intro. So note to self, for the show, we need a birthday intro, but we talk about some birthdays this week. So I've got off the top here, turning 70 is 10-pole tutors. Listen to this name, Edward Felix Tudorpole, also known as Edward Tenpole. There's a handful, a mouthful.
Do you remember Swords of a Thousand Men?
That would have been the song. That track.
Oorah, 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 hey. Over the hill with Swords of a Thousand Men.
That was almost like punk meets Dexy's Midnight Renders. I don't know how you describe that.
Punk pub or whatever. If you've ever seen the Rock and Roll Swindle, and I'm sure there's probably bits and pieces of it out there on YouTube, or maybe the whole thing's out there, and he plays an usher in a movie theater in that movie, and he's quite funny. He's quite a character. I mean, he's very, you compare him a little bit to Shane McGowan or whatever, who was a character too. But there was a scene in the movie where this is an old lady. She's probably close to 80 years old, and Tenpole's slacking off, and she's like, "Oi, Tenpole, get moving, get back to work, you lout," whatever. It's like, okay. So I have some funny memories of Tenpole Tudor or whatever. So God bless him. So,
well, it also says here that he's done a number of films and TV shows and acting, and it says that he was in playing a ranting street preacher in Game of Thrones season 2.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I actually
good role, I think so.
Confession, I've never seen Game of Thrones, and I feel terrible, but I'm gonna get to it one of these days.
I'm not into it either. So
Really,
anyway, yeah,
I haven't even tried it, so I can't comment.
I just can't hold my attention on a lot of series. There's a few ones. I mean, we mentioned earlier Stranger Things, and I like the Wednesday series and one or two others, but there's all these other ones. People say, "What do you think of this?" or whatever, and I'm like, I never watched any of them. I just can't hold my attention to it. So
yeah, well, you have to try to get past it. My theory is you always try to get past 4 episodes. Don't bail after 1 or 2. Get to like the 4th, and you start to know the characters, and that's the turning point for me. If you can hang into like 4 episodes.
I mean, one of the things we had New Kids on the Block for a short period when I was at Universal, and they came to Toronto to do promo. And I was so excited about that because, as you know, I'm a huge New Kids on the Block fan. I guess it was New Kids anyway, but Donnie Wahlberg was with New Kids. I think that's right. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But anyway, I didn't care. I didn't care about the band. He was in Band of Brothers. So there was myself and one of the other guys from the label. All we wanted to do was talk to him about what he did in the Band of Brothers series. And he was totally accommodating about that. So hats off to him. I got a lot of respect for him.
Couple other birthdays very quickly. Jam Elmar of Jam and Spoon turned 65 this week. We're talking about the week of December 1st to 7th. Mark Spoon, his partner, died in 2006. Rick Savage of Def Leppard turned 65. Look at these seniors, eh? We're right in the right company. Yeah.
Then we also Rick Buckler, right?
Yeah,
from the Jam and from the Jam, who had the birthday, but also we lost this year too. One of the great ones.
He would have been 70 today. Yeah.
So much for the Jam ever getting back together, which would have never happened in the first place. So,
yeah. Just quickly, I wanted to mention it's a long time ago, but they were such big records released this week. 60 years ago was Rolling Stones, December's Children, and Beatles' Rubber Soul, both out this week. Now, Rubber Soul being a massive, significant record for a whole bunch of reasons. We could do 3 episodes just on the Beatles' Rubber Soul, which still today, think about that, 60 years ago, and it still stands. It's in the top 100. It's at 35 on Rolling Stone magazine's 500 greatest albums of all time. Yeah. That's how good that record is.
And, it's timely with this anthology record that's just come out. And and some of these tracks that Jeff Lynne has gone in and reworked, and it's sort of like I don't know the correct terminology for it, but it's almost unmixed them and put them back together. And there's the John Lennon song on there. And I was listening to it because I was putting my show together for NY The Spirit. And I was like, oh my God, it sounds so great compared to the original. And there's a lot of people that were skeptical about why would people want to have this again, because it came out in whatever it was, 1995. The technologies move forward, and those tracks that were a little muddy at the time are now just sound absolutely fantastic. So I laid my wallet down, Scott, and bought it today. So
yes,
there you go.
Oh, that was just, I forgot. Yes. What did Ivor buy this week?
Well, I bought, so I bought the anthology, the CD version, which is 8 CDs. I also bought Stiff Little Fingers and Flammable Material, probably for the 3rd time, but it has been given the super deluxe treatment. So it is much expanded from what it was. And I also have a buddy of mine in the UK who worked on the package itself, and he's done amazing packages before for Ian Hunter and Gentle Giant and family bands like that. So when he told me he was working on Stiff Little Fingers, I'm like, gotta have it. And I love Stiff Little Fingers. They're long overdue to come back to.
I'm with you too.
So
yep, I'm with you there on that one, 100%.
We're going to mention the Stones' December's Children. I think equally, Stones' December's Children is one of their all-time great records. It has As Tears Go By on it, that was amongst other great songs on it, which is obviously Marianne Faithfull's biggest hit up until her Broken English time frame.
Yeah, and also I'm Free was on that, which remember Soup Dragons? The
Soup Dragons. Yes, I worked that record in Canada.
Yeah.
We got it 40,000. Never got to gold at the time, but it got damn close.
Yeah, the original, for those that don't know, you think of the Soup Dragons song, which they did an amazing version of it. It is spectacular. The original was the Stones on that album, December's Children, which was kind of like a North American version of earlier album out in the UK. I think that happened a lot back then. Certainly with the Beatles and the Stones back in the '60s, the albums would come out, and then there was a bunch of singles that came out, and the record companies in North America tended to kind of wait till the singles came out and put them together in
Well, a lot
another
of them were
kind of package, right?
completely different packages,
Yeah.
what they would put out back then. And I'm glad that kind of, it was great for the time, but I think now today it's good that it's uniform and everybody gets the same.
Okay, before we wrap up this week, Ivor, there's one thing I wanted to mention in here because I found this just the other day. I realized because it was 5 years ago that I had my quadruple bypass, and I think I talked about it in a post to tell people. Yes. One of the things about this, from a serious standpoint, is that get your Lp(a) checked when you get your blood work done. There's a lipoprotein. Yes, it's called a lipoprotein called the Lp(a). Get that checked because they don't usually check for it, and it's a really strong indicator if you're potentially going to have some family history and trouble with a heart disease. It's an important factor to look into if that's high. And they were saying as many as 25% of people may have this, and it's kind of a mutation. And you can exercise, you can diet till you're blue in the face, and you will still have a problem if you have a raised Lp(a), and it's all genetics, it's all family history.
Well, just continue to keep your health, Scott. And I know you're out there riding your bike all the time. I'm trying to do my best. When you retire and you go to university, they say, well, the freshman 15 or the freshman 25 that you put on. And since I've retired, which has now been 2 years, and I put on all this damn weight, so I'm trying to get healthy again. And I've got some T-shirts to wear that I don't fit into anymore, and we need to show them on this program. I did have a couple of quick little hits too, also before we get back.
Just before you do that, just here's what I found with I thought you'd get a kick out of. And okay. I guess I was bored because I was just out of the hospital recovering from a quadruple bypass. So I was at home and took a little while before I could get up and get moving. But I did this quadruple bypass by the numbers for me. Okay, so here's a couple of highlights from it. 4, the number of arteries blocked. 1 at 90%, 2 at 80%, 1 at 50%. 4, the number of blood vessels, basically veins, taken from other parts of my body, 2 from one leg, 1 from the other, and 1 from my arm. And by the way, the surgeon told me, he says, I went to take a he was like French Canadian, so excuse my best French Canadian accent. He goes, Scott, I went into the one leg. I did not like the one vein, so I had to go back in and take another. Sorry. That's why you have 2 scars there on your leg. Thank you for that.
We're going to get in trouble for that. We're going to get flagged.
1, the number of power tools used. A sternum saw, basically a reciprocating saw. That's how they get to your heart. Yeah, they have to cut you up a bit. 7, the number of titanium wires used to tie the breastbone or sternum back together following surgery.
Do you still have any of that in your body?
Or yeah, the wires are still there. They're still there. Yeah, they're there for life.
So when you go through the airport, does every once in a while, like, you show up on the X-ray machine?
I worried about that, and I asked about that, and they said, I don't think so. And so that was the first time I went somewhere. I honestly, God, I was waiting for that to go off and just saying, well, look, I got a scar. And then finally I got 5 was the number of hours in surgery. So there's quadruple bypass by the numbers.
By the numbers. Did you listen to the Who by numbers by any chance in your recovery process? I just thought
yes. Oh, that would have been a nice segue right there. Sorry, a couple of things you had to add before we run off.
Quick things that I thought, you and I talk sports a little bit, and I'm still a big sports guy, not as much. I think I sort of thrown myself so much into this and all of the stuff around CFNY, which we're going to have some news on pretty soon on that documentary. But I loved what the NFL did this past couple of days for the Thanksgiving show, and in particular Detroit, where Eminem they hired him to do the curation, and they brought Jack White in, and so Jack White performs. They're doing 7 Nation Army, and then all of a sudden out of the floor comes Eminem, and I was like, wow, that was absolutely killer. So hats off to the NFL for doing that for their Thanksgiving Day game. And the Detroit game, the first one, they had Little John and Post Malone on the other 2 games that were on on the same day. And also just the Juno announcements this past week, where it was announced that Joni Mitchell was going to get the Lifetime Juno Award, and simultaneously Nelly Furtado get the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. And once again, the Junos are in Hamilton. And we talked about the Cops Coliseum and the TD Coliseum in the previous episode, and didn't realize this, but the Junos have been in Hamilton more than any other place except Toronto. So six times for the Junos there. But I was going to say also they do have the Arkells, who are local heroes, playing, as well as the Beaches. But the one thing that to me is like, Joni Mitchell, what is she, 83 now? Absolutely, you deserve this. Nelly Furtado is 46, sold millions of records around the world, wonderful artist, great ambassador for Canada and culture, and many styles of music. I will say this, and it's a personal thing for me, is that, Teenage Head have been around for 50 plus years now, and they're not being acknowledged at this point. I'm hoping that, good things happen and then they find some way to do it, because they deserve it. And I will give a yardstick for people to think about here, is that both the Velvet Underground and the Ramones are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Neither one of those acts ever sold any records during the times that they were around, and only became music icons after the fact. But they're both in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and have been for quite some time, if not decades. So to me, in Canada, the Teenage Head are Canada's equivalent of the Ramones. They don't stream like the Nelly Furtado does, or Joni Mitchell. They're not on the radio like those acts are and have been. But you talk to anybody who's in our age group, Scott, and who went to concerts in the 80s and remember what was on the radio in the 1970s across this country, not in just Hamilton, they will remember Teenage Head very fondly. So to me, I really hope that Alan Reed and the Juno Committee and all the rest of the people who are involved with it see some way to honor Teenage Head in some shape or form, because they really deserve it, especially the year that the Junos are in Hamilton.
Agreed. Well said. And we'll keep the fight up, Ivor. Totally agree. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Music Milestones YYZ at Outlook.com if you want to email us with some thoughts, comments, or questions. Music Milestones YYZ at Outlook.com. And also follow us on the socials. Just look for Music Milestones YYZ. And we're on the various socials. And we've got posts going up every day.
Now you can listen to us on Spotify, on Apple Music, on Amazon Music, and also on YouTube. We're there now. So thank you for joining us, and tell your friends about us too.
Beautiful. Thank you.